Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with a flat shaker card in a 5x7 size, which I'm almost positive I've never done a 5x7 size in a flat shaker. I've done a lot of flat shakers. I'll have a link at the end of this video to the entire playlist I've done, because I've done many flat shaker cards in all different sorts of ways. They're just loads of fun. So today's is going to be a 5x7. And I started with this Plumeria Flowers stencil from Picket Studios. This is like a 6x9 stencil, which is great because, again, you can do 5x7 cards, you can do slimline with this size, all the fun things. And I cut down a piece of Simon Says Stamp's smooth white cardstock to slightly bigger than 5x7. I think right now it's like 5 1/4 by 7 1/4. You know, it just gives me a little bit of wiggle room. I always like that because sometimes I'm just not 100% positive where I'm going with any of it. Which, case in point, this is actually my second attempt with this card. It just, oh, the chaos and all the craziness. But anywho, I ended up, because this was my second attempt, and I had washed the stencil, just all the different things. I taped down the stencil just to give it a little extra. Like, I have the cardstock stuck to my Brutus Monroe stick and stamp mat. And normally, like, the stencil sticks too, but like I said, just chaos. So I just used some PIXIE tape to hold down the stencil. And then I am using two different trios of Simon's Positively Saturated inks. And I'm using my Waffle Flower stencil mat, not to do the stenciling. I'm just using the stencil mat to hold all my ink pads. It's kind of nice when I've got, 6, 7 different ink pads on the go. I can just stick them on here. And because the stencil mat silicone, it just holds everything in place. It's perfect. So I did my ink blending and kept it pretty simple. I just did like pinks for the flowers. I used brown and one of Simon's little tiny round blending brushes for the flower centers. Used the greens for the leaves. And then when I removed the stencil, I just went back over those areas with the lightest colors. And I'll have links to the specific colors I used, but this was bubblegum for the pink, and the lightest color was celery for the green. And just very lightly kind of went over just to kind of soften the really harsh white outlines. Just gives it that little extra something. So once I was done my stenciling, with anything you put on the stick and stamp mat, it helps to just bend the mat kind of on itself to pop off the cardstock. So I removed that, and then I die cut another piece of the same smooth white cardstock, and I used the Wander butterfly die set. There's like a big butterfly die and then a couple words and then some little butterflies. So I just die cut the largest one, stuck it to the mat so that holds it in place. I need to make a habit of doing this more. The only reason I haven't been doing this is this kind of shows my OCD, is because the inks stain it. It's the same thing with my stencil mat. That's why you guys don't see me. I know, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like I say with everything, do as I say, not as I do, because I've got issues, man. Anyway, I'm getting over it, and I'm getting over it. I'm just, I ink blended the same pink inks over that butterfly. And then I use the coordinating stencil. There is, which you can see here, and I'll actually use the other side on the inside of the card. But the one side has all this detail. So I just stuck that, and this is where you can see it sticks to the mat. It's perfect. So I stuck that, and I used one of Picket Fence's paper glaze paste. My brain stopped for a second there. I'm really liking their paper glaze paste. These luxe ones, they've got a ton of colors. They're really pretty. The one I used today, I'm not sure, it might not be either. It's not available yet, or I just couldn't find a link for it, but there's several, and I'll link to the pink tinsel one that's very similar to this. But it's just pretty, and it has shimmer and sparkle in it and wonderfulness. So anyway, after it was dry, I popped it off the stencil mat. The stencil mat, I just rinse under water. Regardless of whether I'm using it in this way or I have it with my the Blending Buddy, different things I've shown in videos, just a nice light rinse under water. I don't scrub at it or anything like that, and then I just let it air dry, and it stays sticky, and it's good to go. It gets stained, like I said. I have issues with that, but it works fine. So, to set everything aside, I trimmed down my panel to 5x7. And then I pulled out, this is the full front shaker die set from Picket Fence Studios. This is the 5x7 size. So this wafer die is huge. The only way this wafer die is going to work for you, you need to have a big machine like a Spellbinder's Platinum, the full-size Gemini, etc. Like the ones with the plates that'll cut like an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock. Now, a way around that, because there's also all those greenery wafer dies in this die set, which I didn't use on this card. I'll use it on a future one. Is you could use, instead of die cutting, is you could just use this outline and just trace it with a Sharpie. That can work too, you know, if you don't have a big die cut machine. But again, if you want to use specifically this huge outline wafer die, you need a big machine. I have obviously the Spellbinder's Platinum, this big guy. I use this a lot, all the time. I keep it behind me. I don't keep it on my desk where I'm filming because this machine's a beast. It's huge, but I wanted to show it on camera. So the other thing I used is these shaker sheets from Picket Fence, and these are neat. I opened the package and they're basically like bags. So there's two sides to each of them. So you saw me there trim off, like cut them in half basically. They're like 11 by 14 inches, so you'll get a ton. I've shown, again, in my playlist, I have used all different sorts of things to make my shakers. This is my first time using these. I'm really quite happy with them. They're thinner material, so they're easier to work with. You don't need to die cut them, but I wanted to see if I could. And I had this wafer die, and I was like, let's just see. And it die cut. Because again, if you've worked with like clear packaging type material and trying to die cut them, so often that stuff does not like to be die cut. You know, like you'll get partly die cut, just weird things like that. So I die cut it. And I like the way it cut the like flaps around the edge. It just made it easier. And there's not so much overhang like I normally get. So to each their own. I was pleased. So to adhere them, like I always say, you want a good strong adhesive. I don't mess around with the liquid adhesive with like adhering any sort of like plastic or clear packaging because it's just going to be a mess. So I used score tape. I adhered 3 sides to the back like I showed. I left the 4th side open so I can add my shaker bits. And then the other new to me little product here, these are shaker garnish from Picket Fence. And when I opened the package and I looked at this and I was like, what? Like I was like, I don't quite understand the point here until I made a shaker card and started playing with it. I was like, oh, these are fun. I don't even know exactly what they're made of, but they're very lightweight and they're pretty. You get a great big old container of them. And I was like, oh, so I can add like, you know, fun shaker bits and a good amount of them. And they're not going to add a bunch of weight. They're like rolled up little bits of I don't even know. I don't know what they're made out of, but they're neat. So I added those and I added some sequins. I sealed it up and I've got my shaker panel that is 5x7, which is fabulous. And then I got my butterfly and then I need a sentiment and I used a little note word die again. I really like this word die. And I die cut the words from some Altenew glitter cardstock, another favorite of mine. And because this card just needed more shimmer, more glitter. So I die cut the words from the green glitter cardstock. I die cut the outline from just white cardstock. I adhered those together with craft tacky glue. I decided this time not to stack my words. Usually, you know, I always stack my words. I want to mention. I was seeing how mostly flat I could keep this card and yet still keep it a shaker card. So after all of that, to make my actual card base, I took a full piece of cardstock and I cut it to 10 inches by 7 inches. And then I'll use my little score buddy and my Teflon bone folder. I'm going to score this at 5 inches. So this will be my 5x7 note card. So scored that, reinforced the score with the side of my bone folder. And then I've got my card. And then I'm going to open this up. And on the inside, I'm going to use the solid stencil of that layered Wander butterfly. And same thing. I'm just going to use a little bit of PIXIE tape just so I don't get ink where I don't want it. And then I'm only going to use the lighter colors. So I'm going to use the bubblegum pink for the base of the butterfly and a light hand with my blending brush Because again, when I add things to the insides of cards, I'm always doing that with the awareness that, you know, I want to be able to write over it. So I don't want it to be super intense, super distracting, etc. Like, I want to be able to write over it with a ballpoint pen, you know, and it'd be good to go. So the outline, or like the main part, was done with the bubblegum ink, and then the little details I used the Sweets ink, which was the middle shade, but again, just a light hand. So I've got the detail, I've got the butterfly, we're good to go. And then the sentiment stamp is from the Picket Fence, Ways to Say Get Well. I just love this thinking of you sentiment. So I inked that up with the medium green ink, which was Limelicious. And I was, you know, saying how I use pixie tape to keep ink. Yeah, I had ink on my hands and smeared it on the inside of the card. Now, I've shown this before, but I thought I'd show it again. Mono sand eraser. Highly recommend. It's just something you should have in your, you know, little toolkit with crafting. It's wonderful. I use that to remove ink smears, to remove overfoiling, that sort of a thing. I sand it I use the like sand eraser first, and then I just use a white eraser just to smooth it out, and we're good to go. If it's a card front, I've talked about this and shown this in other videos. If I get like a little smear or an oops, more often than not, glue something on top of it. Sentiment, an embellishment, whatever. But if it's in an area like the inside of the card where I can't cover it up, mono sand eraser for the win. This thing has saved me so many times. So, fix those little oops on the inside of the card. I adhered that full shaker panel, which is more of the score tape. And then I adhered the butterfly and the sentiment also with score tape to the front of this. And I was going to be done like here. But then I pulled out the envelope. This is one of Simon's new 5x7 white envelopes. And I was like, the envelope needs something. And at first I was going to blend like the butterfly in the front. Actually, I still could. Ugh. Editing me here. I'm like, ooh, I could add the butterfly to the front. I might still do that. But I won't be able to show it in the video because I'm done the video. Anyway, I used the big stencil, the Plumeria flower stencil. And this time I did it on the back. I was going to do this on the front, but then I was like, no, it would still look pretty on the front. That's fine. But I didn't want the front to be as distracting because, you know, I want my address and return address and all the things to go there. And I was like, ooh, it would look really cute though on the back. You know, the front will just be white, or I might add the butterfly still. We'll see. But the back will have the pretty pattern, and you'll get to see the pattern in full since I covered some of it up with the butterfly on the card. So again, I went with just the lighter shades. I left off the darkest shades of the trios and just added that to the envelope, and I just think it just finished it off. So here is my 5x7 flat shaker card in all its glory, with its little shakety bits and, you know, glitter sentiment and texture butterfly. I really love this Luxe texture paste, or Luxe paper glaze. Lurf. And as always, I will have links below to all the things. I will have a link to my blog post directly below the video, a link to all the supplies I use so you can check them out. And then, like I said earlier, I will link to my flat shaker playlist, because I got a whole bunch of videos and ideas and all those things in there as well. So you guys can check that out if you're interested. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping and commenting. Subscribe if you haven't. And I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.